Perego. I work at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, the unit which is responsible for the technical coordination of the implementation of the SPA directive. I would like to thank you, Nicholas, for inviting my unit to give this presentation. The focus of my presentation would be on some activities around INSPIRE that are trying to address the issue of the reuse of geospatial information, especially INSPIRE 1. So, starting from the context, we know that we have a number of initiatives at the different levels because we have Geo, the Belmont Forum about geospatial data. We have INSPIRE, of course. We have the ePSI directive in Europe. There are two initiatives more at the political level, like the G8 Open Data Charter and also the Open Government Partnership. And then we have another initiative around research data, which is Research Data Alliance. So we see that there are a number of people trying to address more or less the same issues from different perspectives. And in some cases, there is no real coordination in the efforts, even though frequently we share common issues about interoperability. So, INSPIRE is one of these initiatives. It's probably a bit different from the others because, as you well know, I think there is no need for an introduction about INSPIRE. One of the very key points, is about the fact that INSPIRE is both a legal and technical framework. So, it's an involvement of all the member states of the European Union to set up this infrastructure that is a legal obligation. So this is a bit different also from the PSI directive because, this is a directive, so it's a legal act. The point is that is not regulating how this is implemented at the level of detail that we have in INSPIRE. So, what is happening is that also inside the European Union we have a number of initiatives concerning open data and public sector information that we have a number of regulations. You can see some of them here on the communication of open data. There was the revision to the directive on the reuse of public sector information, so the PSI directive that was done just last year. And there is also a specific program inside the European Union which is coordinated by the Commission, which is called the ISA, Interoperability Solution for European Public Administration, that is working in this area. Then in 2013, in December actually, it was first published at the EU Open Data Portal. So it's the Open Data Portal publishing metadata about data owned or operated by European Union institutions and bodies. And there is also work underway on a pan-EU Open Data Portal. In this case, this portal will be meant to federate all the national portals of European member states and to provide a single access point to them. So all these activities started independently from INSPIRE. So there was kind of an approach to saying, okay, we have INSPIRE, which has its own framework and is following a specific roadmap for adoption and implementation. Then we have a number of initiatives around open data covering usually cross-sector information. So it's not, if you have a look at these regulations are not concerned about the type of data we are talking about. So it's a cross-sector perspective on this data that is trying to find its own roadmap. What we were trying to do, at least working with our colleagues in the Commission, is to find as much as possible the synergies between what we are doing inside INSPIRE and what they are doing for the work around the PSI directive, the open data portals that now are available, and for example the pan-European one work is underway. So we were trying to identify the synergies and try also as much as possible to use what is available in Inspire, because Inspire provides huge experience. It's many of the things that probably will be done in the public sector as cross-sector open data portals. I mean, we have a lot of expertise inside Inspire because we have addressed some of the issues they are going to address. An important point is that in October last year, the Commission published a document about the implementation in the European Union of the G8 Open Data Charter. And as you can see here, Inspire is mentioned explicitly as a comprehensive framework for access to and reuse of geospatial information, including electronic infrastructure. This means that, at least for the Commission, Inspire is one of the key infrastructures, and it's something that we can build on when we are moving this open data perspective. The point is that in Europe we have a situation which is very complicated. I mean, we have 24 official languages, we have 3 official alphabets, and 28 member states, which means more than 28 institutional setups, because depending on the country, we may have different institutional setups at the local, regional, or national level. So it's very complicated. And we have to address this issue. At the same time, we are celebrating this diversity, and also multilinguality for us is, okay, it may be an issue, but for us is something quite important, is something that we can consider as a value, not a problem. So, starting from this point, what we were trying to do is to collaborate or coordinate as much as possible the work in Inspire with other activities around, like those carried out by standardization bodies like OGC, ISO, W3C, and international initiatives like the EU and GGIM, for instance. We are also working together with other colleagues in the ISA program, because the focus of the ISA program is to support interoperability through reuse. So for us it is an opportunity to show how Inspire can be reused inside other sectors of the public administration. Anyway, we are also working together with a number of projects that are listed here: GeoNo, Smart Open Data, in GeoCloud, many of these EM Plus and Inspire. These projects actually are doing something that is critical for Inspire, are trying to actually use Inspire data for doing practical things. In some cases, they are trying to include the open data technology, the linked open data technology also inside Inspire. So they are doing some pioneering job, and it's very important for us to understand exactly what they are able to do with the data and which are the issues they identify in order to make Inspire data more usable. So what I would like to do is just to give you some brief overview of a few activities we are carrying on, especially in the framework of the ISA program, concerning the promoting the reuse of the Inspire as a whole. So in the ISA program we have 2 actions which are related to Inspire. One is the reusable Inspire reference platform, and the other one is the European Union location framework. The reusable Inspire reference platform, which is called Athina, is focusing on the technical and semantic part of the interoperability issues. And the purpose is to build the common components that can be reused in the wide sense. So it may be pieces of software, but can also be specifications in order to help the implementation of Inspire, but also solutions in order to give access to the Inspire infrastructure by using other technologies like big data, for instance. The work we did was also in collaboration with other actions, and actually the output of this work was is mentioned here. I don't know whether it is readable, but it is about the core location vocabulary, ADMS, and the ticket application profile that has already been mentioned before. So, one of the work we are doing is about the possibility of using RDF for expressing Inspire data models. This is a big issue. Again, I don't want to go into the technical details, but what we understood is that there are a number of technical problems in order to use this technology, but it may be very helpful because this is also a way to adopt and inspire more mainstream technologies, which means that this way we will be able to help people reuse Inspire data. Actually, it's not just about the reuse of the data, but also reuse of the data models, because Inspire is covering 34 thematic areas. Many of them are relevant also for other sectors. And we have an example again about addresses and buildings. And not just about environmental issues, but many agencies in any country is operating this information, and this information is relevant for them. So one of the points was, okay, we have already reached an agreement in Inspire about how to model this kind of entities. Why not reusing these models also outside Inspire? The point is that there may be a technological barrier because the standards we are using are not very familiar with other sectors. So the idea was, okay, maybe we can also consider providing the same formal tools in other technologies that are more used in other sectors. And this is why we're considering the possibility of using RDF also for the representation of the other data models. One of the things we were doing was not to try to build the official vocabularies for Inspire, but rather to agree on common methodologies. Because the problem is not just to transform what we have into another format, another representation. The problem is that this may need a collaborative effort. So, considering how many data models we have and also their complexity, it is important to have a collaboration in defining how to transform this information. Also because we have a lot of examples of member states already expressing in RDF their Inspired data. Related to this work was the work around PIDs, so persistent identifiers. And this is a very critical topic. And I mean, interestingly, in the directive, we have this paragraph saying that the implementing rules of Inspire shall address a common framework for the unique identification of spatial objects to which identifiers under national systems can be mapped in order to ensure interoperability between them. So it's already inside the Inspire directive. The point is that so far, inside Inspire, there is not yet, at least, a consistent way to express or to specify persistent and global identifiers for spatial objects, for our data, and also able to support things like versioning, for instance. So what we did is to try working on this and focusing specifically on the problem of the governance, because I mean we have already a number of technical solutions for doing that, but the problem is about how we can maintain these identifiers, how can ensure they are unique at the global level, and how can we address problems like organizational changes, because in some cases we have data that are operated by a given agency, and then in a couple of years another agency is in charge of this data. So the situation is very dynamic, and we should be able to address these problems. Considering the institutional setup of Inspire, of course, because it should be sustainable inside the Inspire infrastructure. It's another point, another issue we are working on, and we are going to publish probably a report on this work in the next few weeks, is about the possibility of representing Inspire metadata by using also other formats, and specifically this DCAT application profile for data portals in Europe. This is a specification that has been developed inside the JIRC program, and this metadata schema is meant to be used as a kind of metadata interchange format between data portals in Europe. So the idea was, okay, if you're able to use this metadata profile, we will be able also to share as much as possible Inspire metadata, also in other sectors, to support cross-sector querying of the data, including also Inspire metadata. And what is happening is that this metadata schema will be used as a metadata schema for the Pan-European Open Data Portal. So is also an opportunity to be able to share as much as possible our metadata in other data portals and give the Inspire data more visibility. Metadata is just the starting point, because from the data you get to the data. So it's also a way to help people working in other sectors to find relevant data inside Inspire. Data that may be relevant for the work they are doing. So this work has been also an opportunity to understand which are the issues that we are facing, where we are trying to move from the technologies that are consolidated inside the geospatial field in other areas. Because, for instance, just looking at the work we did on the metadata, we identified a number of missing mappings, let's say. So we have some metadata elements in Inspire, like the spatial, the temporal resolution, coordinate reference system, and so on, that, for the time being at least, cannot be mapped to any suitable candidate, at least in the most popular vocabularies. So this is something that we plan to use in order to promote further standardization in this area. And actually there are a number of activities working on this. The final work I would like to mention is about the ISA core location vocabulary. This vocabulary, again, has been developed inside the ISA program, is partially based on Inspire. And the purpose of this vocabulary was to define the minimal set of terms used across sectors in order to express information concerning location. This vocabulary now is installed in WTC spaces, is under responsibility of the community group, the Locations and Addresses community group. And here you can see basically how this can represent it. So as you can see, it's very simple. You have just three classes: a location, a geometry, and an address. The address is basically modeled on the address representation data type in Inspire. And as you can see, there are no classes that are modeling some specific notions we are used to, especially in the geospatial, we like features. Why this? This was a very interesting exercise, because what happened during the work we did on this core vocabulary, the working group included people coming from all the member states. It was an open process, and everybody was able to join. But the important thing is that the composition was people coming from different sectors. So the point is that, talking about features, if you talk to different people, they think of different things. In case you say, what's a feature? In some, I mean, also in the geospatial field, we have different opinions about what the feature is. So it's not a very easy concept. But this is just to give an example. It's a problem in some cases of building bridges between terminologies, between communities. And it was interesting, this work, because this gave some ideas about how we can move to make our tools, formal tools, technology, and so on, reusable in other sectors. We must consider which is the level of complexity we would like to keep, whether it is needed or not, or whether we should reuse other terminologies. So what happened here is that we were not able to go into the details because this was just the minimal set of terms used everywhere in the public sector to express information about location. And another issue that we realized was, for instance, just having a look at the geometry, there was no agreement about how to express it, because people say, okay, we can use just points, others use polygons, bounding boxes, geographical names, and so on. And people using geometries use WKT, GML, or the Geospatial approach. So there was no real consensus. So the solution that we were able to reach was, okay, we have this geometry, which is a very abstract class that is basically supporting any kind of representation of encoding. This is work that we realize we cannot do inside the work done for the co-location vocabulary. We are not able to reach an agreement about how to express these things. But is a big issue, this one, that can be addressed probably by a broader community. So it was just a starting point, but it was very useful to understand which types of issues we are facing, especially when we want to reuse geospatial information in other sectors. Okay, what is that? So, this is my last slide. Which are our plans? Well, we think that first of all, we should promote as much as possible the use of inspired data, especially for end-user applications and for SMEs also. And we have a number of projects working on that. For instance, Inspire, EM Plus, they are all about SMEs. Also, Smart Open Data is working on that. We have GeoNo that is working on the use of semantic web technologies for geospatial data. They published recently a report on work they did on the representation in RDF of inspired data, metadata, and data models. There is also the Melodies project that started just recently, and so on. I think that this is really what we would like to see, because we have been working on the implementation of Inspire, but we must understand about the added value of Inspire just when we are able to use our data. And probably to make use of the data, we may need some modifications of the way data are published, not only about the format, but it may affect also the workflow followed for the publication of this data. There are also a number of thematic pilots in policy areas related to environment, for instance on water, air, soil, and the raw materials transport systems. This is another way to reuse what we have in Inspire. And then, for sure, we are very interested on what is going to happen, especially, and probably Phil later will talk about this. There was a workshop in London, a joint workshop organized by WCC and OGC. It was very interesting because we were able to discuss about issues, common issues of two different communities, the web community and the geospatial one. And just recently, a draft of a working group, a joint working group between WCC and OGC has been published about geodata on the web. And I mean, this is very interesting because it is exactly what may help the reuse of geospatial data in other sectors, but also for some more practical uses. Then the last point in RDA, which is Research Data Alliance. I don't know whether you're aware of this initiative, but it's an initiative jointly funded by the European Commission, by the United States and Australian governments to facilitate exchange and reuse of research data. It's quite big, actually. It involves people coming from all over the world. Recently there was a proposal of setting up a geospatial interest group, which is focusing on the cross-domain interoperability of geospatial data. So it's about interoperability and reuse of geospatial data and also in other domains. So there is a strong relation with this. Why I'm talking about research data? Well, at JIRC, we are working both on research data and public sector information. And what we realized is that, well, there is no clear separation between these two words. Actually, it is very common that you get public sector information by processing research data and vice versa. So for us, it's an important point, especially to address some issues that are now coming up, like the problem of data curation and preservation, to address this issue in a broader context and possibly by coordinating the force and reuse as much as possible the expertise we have. So this is why I think that there is a strong relation with these activities, and probably the outcome of the work that will be done that will be relevant to inspire. Okay, that's all. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Does anyone have any questions for Andrea?
Yes?
You mentioned like you speak about artificial relinking and versioning, harvesting, and
Yeah.
And basically, it seems to me you're talking about linked data to me. You're using all the words, but not just talking.
No,
about
okay.
data.
So I was looking here. Yeah. No, okay, just to give more details about that. Currently, I'm partially involved in the work of the Inspire Job Portal, for instance. So just to give you some practical output about that. In Inspire, there is no consistent way of associating, for instance, global identifiers to datasets. And this is a problem, for instance, when you harvest this information, because once you harvest, you're not able to understand whether you're harvesting the same data, a dated version of the data, or new data. So you assume that they are all new data, and that's all. So this is a big problem, because also technically, it's an issue in terms of performance, efficiency, you know. So just to say that it's not just the problem of linking the data. This will be very useful. The point is that persistent identifiers are good for Inspire, even in this current implementation, because they will be able to address a number of problems. Also, for instance, the versioning, which is versioning of the data, which is another problem. In some cases, you're not able to understand whether the data set that you have is a new version, or the data set is the same data set. Sometimes they use the same identifier for denoting different versions of the same data set. So, especially when you're dealing with information used, for instance, for policy making, in some cases, there may be a requirement that in case the policy is not able to achieve the expected results, you have to track back the process and understand where the error was. So the point is, in some cases, you're not able to recover the original data used for that, and that's an issue. You know, so it's something that is, considered as an important point. Not only inside this pilot, it's now a lot of work around this. There is also in RDA, there is a group working on persistent identifiers, for instance. It is very much linked with the preservation, how do you maintain this data, the official registers, and so on. And of course, if you have global persistent identifiers that can be also differentiable, then, like HTTP URIs, for instance, okay, then you can really use the linked data approach. But the first step is at least to have identifiers that are persistent and globally able to globally identify in a unique way your data.
The library world has their UIs, user object identifiers.
Yeah.
Can any work be cross-referenced?
No, I mean actually a lot of proposals about the setting up this infrastructure for persistent identifiers is around the handle systems and DOIs, because in that case you have a governance of the identifiers. Then they are usually implemented as URIs, but this is not a story. The point is that this is a process and a governance model that you can use in order to ensure the persistence of these identifiers. So many people are working on that and on the use of DOIs, especially in the research domain. Now there are many people proposing the use of DOIs also for the data, and to link data with publications and the models used to generate the data and so on. Yes.
Good morning, good afternoon. No, we're still before lunch. My name is Athina Trakas. I work with the OGC, and I am presenting the next 20 to 25 minutes about what we as an organization, as a standards development organization, are doing. Now I know why Andrea always looked up there. You cannot see it here. Good. I will give a short introduction to the OGC. So who of you knows what the OGC is? Good, that's good. I brought a few examples. So I brought an example from a standard that could be used for public sector information, and I brought an example of an EU-funded project. Of course, there are a lot of examples and projects out there that are using open standard and OGC standard, but well, the question is always where to start and where to end. So, we are talking when we talk about, well, nowadays we have a lot of issues to address. There's a lot of challenges upcoming. Urban sustainability is a topic. Then, of course, climate change, natural disasters. And all this very often happens cross-boundary, and this is still our biggest challenge we have to address. And those of you who have heard me before, if I talk about cross-boundary, I don't mean only the boundaries between two countries. There are boundaries within one country, there are boundaries between organizations, within organizations. You can work for the same organization in different departments, and the boundaries are so huge. And the ability to access, fuse, and apply diverse data sources is critical not only to situational awareness, but for a lot of aspects we face in our daily lives. So what we are doing in OGC, we want to improve the knowledge sharing and transfer. So we address a lot of different communities that needs, well, interdisciplinary themes and topics. So growth in urban centers, then of course water management and availability is a topic that is important. And all this can be done much easier if you easily can access data to come to information that you can use to come to a decision. Yeah, making your treasures accessible. As we all know, and that's the topic, the availability of data is crucial for governments, for businesses, but also for citizens. And the big question is, how do we address or how do we share the data? And a key factor for accessibility is standardization, and that is the definition of common interfaces that enable interoperability. So public sector information is there's a huge source of treasures available there, and the question is how can we make this accessible, because this cannot be the way we go for it. So if you talk about the OGC, well, we have a lot of different standards, open standards, and if you think about the World Wide Web, so HTTP is the dial tone, and if you talk about the geospatial web, this is enabled by OGC standards. And all the OGC standards are established by a consensus process, has been approved by our members, and this means also there's a balance of interest, and all members have an equal voice and vote in the OGC. OGC standards are implementable into software, so you find for most of the standards, you find software which you can use that has been implemented, that has implemented a standard, and they are open standards. That means they are freely and publicly available, there's no license fee, and they are vendor neutral. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the OGC, please go on, we have a YouTube channel, you can find some nice short videos from an introduction up to some use cases, but I don't do it here now. This is really confusing, sorry. So OGC was founded in 1994, so we have our 20th anniversary. Our 20th anniversary this year, and currently we are over 480 member organizations coming from the public sector, industry, and the academic and research sector. And if you ask our members, why do you join OGC, or what is the driving force to participate in our process, they say, well, we have interoperability issues. So we cannot share data on the web, we cannot share maps on the web, we cannot deliver data to different systems easily, and all this is the driving force behind our members to participate and contribute to the various working groups we have. Again, I do not go into the details of the working groups because this would be a different focus. I would like to share some ideas what we do for public sector information sharing. So this is the list of, well, you see most of our members come from Europe, followed by North America and Asia Pacific, then Middle East, South America. If you want to see where your members come from your country, this is the link, and the presentation will be available later this week. So, as said, our members, they develop standards, and currently we have over 35 OGC standards, and many of them are also ISO standards, because we have a very close relationship with ISO, especially TC211. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of software out there that is implementing the standards. So again, you find, I have put some information up where you can find the software that is implementing the standards. We have a huge and broad user community worldwide. A lot of national SDIs, international SDIs are based on OGC standards, and we cooperate with a lot of organizations. Andrea mentioned the joint W3C OGC workshop on linking geospatial data that took place in March in London, and Phil will later explain a bit more or talk a little bit more about the workshop and the joint activities. And I promote our workshop tomorrow. We have a workshop tomorrow afternoon on especially the topic of linking geospatial data on the web, and this is joint activities between W3C and the OGC. But cooperation is not limited to W3C. We have a lot of alliance partners, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we would also like to share our knowledge and our expertise with other organizations, and therefore we have a lot of alliance partnerships. So if you see the standards, bodies, setting, so this is in the middle, you see the OGC, it's instantiate the domain and the URL into infrastructure. So you have the domain more domain-related standards on the one side and more the infrastructure standards on the other side. And then you have the Euro and the factor standards. And just to get an idea where you could fit OGC and other standards bodies. This might diverse sometimes a little bit, but that's in general how you would address it. So in OGC we have a consensus process that is reflecting a common understanding of our members. They participate in the process, they bring up their requirements, and then they work together in this consensus process to develop solutions for their requirements. Additionally, we have a formalized standards development process. That's our standards program. And this is based on commonly agreed policies and processes. We have another huge program, it's called the interoperability program, and that makes use of innovative processes for testing, verifying, and documenting user requirements. So they take the standards and check if they're fit for use in their communities. They bring in new ideas, so maybe new standards might emerge from this interoperability program. But that again would be a different presentation, and therefore I'm entering now. As promised, as said, I brought some examples with me, and we recently published the GeoPackage standard. Who has looked into the GeoPackage standard or has used the software that is implementing the standard? Oh, okay. So I hope I give you the right idea about the standard. Last year, maybe some of you are aware about that, we had a huge process going on in the OGC. We call this Ideas for OGC. So we ask our members and we ask the public to bring in ideas how the OGC, how we could change. Oh, by the way, that's my colleague, Bart de Lathouwer. So he works with the interoperability program in Europe and is from Belgium. And good. So the GeoPackage, the process, the Ideas for OGC process, the idea was to have a better way to collaborate and cooperate with the implementing community and improve the process. So out of this OGC, Ideas for OGC process, we said we have to be more open, and therefore the GeoPackage standards working group is was open for public participation. Usually OGC standards working groups are more closed at the beginning, but that was open from the very beginning. So, well, in OGC we have standards that are service interfaces, where you can communicate interactively with a software package and get what you ask for. For example, you want a bounding box, or you send out a get map request that gives you back a PNG or a TIFF or a GIF. Then we have formats that define how you can store data. And GeoPackage is now a format, and the nice thing, well, a lot of formats nowadays, file-based geodata formats are tech dinosaurs, so there was the need to bring something new into that. As said, here. So the GeoPackage was the standards working group was part of this opening process. So we used also fast prototyping for that. And in GeoPackage, you can package images, raster data, vector data, and projection information. And you can also define the order in which you want to access the data, or you want the data to be displayed afterwards. It's kind of a zip file. So it's kind of a zip file. but in zip file, usually you don't have the orders. So, you cannot have coordinates, and these are things you need if you deal with geodata. So it's insufficient for the use of geodata and the reusability. So zip files is about packaging and depackaging and having a list with it. So GeoPackage brings more to the plate. Additionally, delivers functions like provide me a defined bounding box in a defined coordination system. So if you think about the container, usually if you pack a container, you start up at the end and you pack it to the fourth, and you want to, if you want to access something that is in the back, you have to depack everything from front until you reach the item you want to. So, but in GeoPackage, you can just access whatever item you want and say in what format you want it. You can say how this should look like. So I brought this example of eggs. Imagine the eggs are stored on top, because they cannot be on top, in the very back of your container. And you want to have them, if you would have a zip file, you have to depack all the container. But with GeoPackage, you can say, I want those eggs that are stored on the very back at the very top, and I would like them as scrambled eggs. Not just eggs, scrambled eggs. So this is the idea, or this is one idea of GeoPackage. Another example is, imagine you need 17 cadastre parcels, you need 4 parking slots, you need a playing ground, and you need 40 trees that are part of a tree cadastre. Someone explained me that, and I said, well, you could use a normal GIS. The person said, yeah, of course you can use a GIS, but you get one shapefile with all the information. It's not giving you the dedicated information you want. And in GeoPackage, each item is addressable separately, and you can define what you want to have. Another example is, because you can use GeoPackage also in offline environments. For example, if you are from an emergency response center and there's an emergency case, you take your tablet, you go out to this emergency area, but you still have this information because you have predefined where this emergency case takes place. So you have the actual data, you have the actual information, and you can use it. So you can make decisions in the area of the disaster or of the emergency case. And then you go back again, you put your you plug your tablet again into your network, you're online again, and you can update all the information. So this is in very short and with some pictures what GeoPackage is offering you. This slide gives you all the information you need. We have a website where there's a GeoPackage website. There was a webinar that is available also through this website, and you can see which software has implemented the standard already. So then my last example is ELF, the European Location Framework. And if you scroll through the program of the Inspire conference, you see a lot of activities around ELF. The idea of ELF is to provide authoritative data in an interoperable way, cross-border, with a reference geo-information for use by European public and private sector bodies. So the project consortium is over 30 organizations big. A lot of national mapping agencies participate, and they want to push out their data for reuse to the public. So the ELF data is limited in thematic scope to topographic, administrative, and cadastral reference data. And there is this platform where you can find all the necessary information, like applications. There's also software can be used, and there is a license will be available. And yeah, that's the ELF open license, I mentioned that. And all the specifications in the ELF project, in the European Location Framework project, are based on ISO and CEN standards on the 19100 series, and the services are implemented using web services by the OGC. Another aspect of the ELF project consortium, or what they want to bring into place, is the experiences they have learned throughout the project, and with the interaction with other organizations, they would like to bring this information back to the Inspire and OGC processes. Watch out for the ELF awareness tour. So we will start after the summer with some touring around in Europe. And the idea is to have real use cases. So we take the data that is provided by the ELF participants, and we want to showcase that, or we want to talk to people in a region and say, hey, this data is available, you can use it. Is that fit for purpose? And then, of course, this is also the feedback from this awareness tour, and the ELF challenge will be reported back to the necessary stakeholder organization. And then I have ELF at the Inspire conference. There's a lot of activities going on, and of course ELF is also tweeting, so watch out for the tweets. And so I think that, yeah. So I brought two examples. A standard that I think is a very good standard for the use of public sector information, reuse of this information, and an example of an EU-funded project that is promoting the reuse of public sector information. And I think both are actually new in our are new on stage, so to say. But look into that and look how you can use that and what is helpful for you. And by the way, Andrea mentioned that we want to promote the use of Inspire data. ELF is doing that, and so it's really I would even say challenge ELF, because our OGC is part of the project consortium. So look how you can use this for your daily work. Summarizing. Yeah, avoid reinventing the wheel. That's one of my, I use this every time, I say this every time. Duplication of work and efforts, we should really try to avoid to do that, because we have enough on our desk to add something others probably have already done. Interoperability and open standards help to sustain investments, and cooperation and communication on international level is key to success. I always say to people, if you don't tell me what doesn't work, how are we supposed to improve? How can we change things? And therefore, talking about OGC as a members organization, there are a lot of OGC members at the Inspire conference. Bart and I, we will be here all week. So if you have questions, ask us. And again, come to our workshop tomorrow with the W3C, because we are at a very early stage there, and you can participate, you can contribute, you can share your ideas with us, and we try to reflect them in what we are doing. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Any questions for Athina? Okay, there's one there.
Athina, I hope to understand more about ELF during the week, but who's the end user? It's a little unclear.
So there are different end users for this awareness tour. We are addressing the industry, but that's not limited to the industry. And I look at my colleague in the back, Bart.
Yeah, I can. Bart Elf, the OGC, I'm working in the ELF project. So The ELF project looks at the end user not being like an individual, but it's more either users of authoritative data through applications. So think of SMEs that build an application that would benefit from having authoritative data as part of their application that would support decision making.
Okay, so the end user is an application
An
developer.
It's a group of application users. So we do not address an individual that would use the authoritative data coming from the NCAs. We're focusing on application builders, and we're also focusing on other agencies that typically would not use geospatial data. So one of the activities that we're doing is making implementation of the table of joint service, where we can link up health data with authoritative information coming from the National Mapping Agency, hoping that we can, 1 + 1 equals, more than 2. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Bart. Very timely.
Within 5 minutes, yes.